Story 1. I guess I would just quit my job and tell everyone I am going on welfare, all while I travel the world alone on my private jet. Story 2. Mimic Dolly Parton and support pet projects that help people. However, I would keep it quiet because no one should ever know that I am wealthy. Story 3. A fun store where I choose all the merchandise. I pretend to work there and hire people based on their enjoyable personalities. It will be a party when I'm at work. Each employee helps select exciting items to sell, and everyone shares in the sales proceeds, creating an incentive to enjoy their time at work. Story 4. Buy a modest home for myself and my parents that we can afford. Pay off all our cars and debts. Set up a living trust for my nieces, nephews, and future children. My husband and I make decent money and occasionally have extra cash for vacations and Legos, so we established these funds years ago. Donate monthly to major nonprofit organizations for shelter pets, programs for homeless individuals, particularly veterans, and anonymously fund cancer research and initiatives to help end world hunger. Purchase a couple of acres of land in different states to protect them from development, using half an acre from each for a protected area for bees. Invest in my local community by providing funding for after-school programs, workforce initiatives, and infrastructure, all anonymously. Consider investing in the stock market or spending it all on Legos, props from my favorite movies, traveling the world, buying unique cosplay, and expansion packs for The Sims 4. Story 5. I would live my normal life but in a slightly more enjoyable level of comfort. As long as I have no debt, I would be very happy. Additionally, I would give a homeless person $100 every time I see one. I would also tip $100 when I go out to eat and try to give as much as possible. Story 6. I would buy a farm and establish an animal rescue organization that would be funded by that $1 billion long after I am gone. Story 7. I would travel wherever I wanted and live simply while I'm there. I don't care for lavishness or status symbols. I would buy a camper and a motorcycle and essentially become a nomad. I would pay off my sister's and best friend's mortgages anonymously and pretend I found a new remote job to avoid any questions about how I can afford my lifestyle. Story 8. I will never spend that much money for the rest of my life, so women's shelters and nature conservation efforts will receive the majority of it. Story 9. I would open a traditional cinema with affordable yet excellent food and drinks, showcasing classic films. I would operate the venue at a significant loss, embodying the town's beloved eccentric movie enthusiast. Story 10. This kind of question is asked constantly, and my answer, realistically, is to take, for example, $10 million and set that aside as spending money. That amount goes into the bank. Interest on that alone, even at a meager 0.07%, is $7,000 for the year, which would be a significant sum to me right now. I take the remaining $990 million and set up a series of trusts. I start with $200 million invested in funds that offer a guaranteed 3% return per year. That serves as my protection money. I use the $6 million in proceeds every year to live and begin gifting as much of it as I can to my children, family, and friends to help avoid taxes. $200 million is allocated in a trust to purchase properties and hire a property manager. Another $200 million goes to a charitable trust where I support local charities and churches in need. Ideally, the income from this trust would allow it to be perpetual, helping my community grow. This would be an anonymous trust. An additional $200 million is directed toward various city and state bond projects that I believe are important for local growth and improvement. This, too, would be an anonymous trust. $200 million is placed into a trust fund designed to help me maintain a low profile while also assisting my trusts with litigation, fees, audit work, and other miscellaneous expenses. I may also use funds from this account to buy businesses or partnership interests. $20 million is invested in a series of long-term accounts, such as retirement accounts, to the extent possible. In the meantime, these funds will contribute to my portfolio. $10 million is allocated to speculative trading and business investments. $50 million goes directly into my portfolio. Story 11. In order: hire an attorney who specializes in large windfalls. Hire a wealth manager or fiduciary. Pay off my mortgage. hire an architect to renovate my primary bedroom and bathroom, purchase a hobby farm in the county, intending to declare in my will that it will be turned over to the National Parks Department upon my death. Story 12. When you say nobody, does that include my wife or immediate family? What about accountants, financial advisors, or lawyers? The Internal Revenue Service? How am I receiving this money? If I end up with $1 billion in cash and the Internal Revenue Service cannot know about it, I would have to personally launder $1 billion into a shell company and then operate everything anonymously through that. It would take me decades to launder that money. Story 13. Pay off my debts. Make a career change for my mental health to work less. Start a fund that helps cooperatives build more housing. Story 14. A modest home with a lot of forest land. Nobody needs to know I own all that land. Then I would travel frequently and tell people it's for work, while contributing to many charities and funding nonprofits that I care about. Story 15. Anonymously pay off patient medical bills from children's hospitals, pay off my mother's house and my sister's student loans, pay off cafeteria bills at schools across the country, donate to animal rescues by setting up monthly food and supply deliveries, donate to homeless shelters, possibly start a nonprofit that provides services to homeless individuals, as our governments often overlook the unhoused, donate to autism research and cancer research, invest a significant amount to ensure that my future generations are taken care of. Story 16. That would be the best case scenario. I wouldn't tell anyone, anyway. I would probably spend it on animal welfare programs, trap and release sterilization for feral animals, education programs, and possibly some domestic shelters that can also serve as animal shelters, where the animals can heal each other. Story 17. Defeating every Republican and stopping the United States' descent into autocracy, authoritarianism, and fascism. Story 18. I work from home. No one would suspect a thing. I would quit my job and not tell anyone except my fiancée. I would explain that I've decided to live on my savings and retire early. She wouldn't be suspicious since she never asks me about money. She doesn't want to be involved with my bank accounts, nor does she inquire about my finances. She simply knows I treat her very well and contribute significantly financially, and that's all she cares about. I donate $100 bills to homeless people I encounter. I support animal charities and continue to pay my bills normally, avoiding sudden large payments that might raise suspicion. Story 19. I would open a beautiful boarding school in an old-fashioned mansion. I don't know why that is my dream, but it just is. Story 20. Invest and live off the income. If I had to hide it even from my family, I would go to work every day and consider the interest my salary. Story 21. I would suggest the existence of a wealthy secret lover and then do whatever I wanted, without fully explaining any aspect. Story 22. I would pay off all my debts and be a secret benefactor to help my loved ones with their debts. I might experience a mental breakdown at work, leading me to quit. Then, I would find a different job that allows me to disconnect from work completely. My goal would be to live with as little stress as possible while maintaining my current lifestyle to avoid drawing suspicion. This would include managing home loans, car loans, and working local jobs, all within the financial limits of whatever job I had at the time. Story 23. This would be so easy. I would keep my job and continue working, spending money on dining out and experiences while on vacation, as well as on gas. I would randomly win $250,000 on a scratch-off ticket, enough to make some adjustments in my life, but small enough that it would go unreported by the news. Story 24. I would create a free spay program in our country and build an animal sanctuary on a farm. I would also donate to animal shelters anonymously. Story 25. The issue with many aspects here is that someone would be aware of it. I would establish a corporation and leverage my existing assets into a cash-based business. Then, I would funnel money through the cash business until reaching the break-even point. Afterward, I would continue to funnel for 2 to 3 years to demonstrate profitability and then sell the business. I would start a new venture at each break-even point. I would use the legitimate funds to acquire ownership stakes in multiple businesses. Story 26. Is the Internal Revenue Service included in nobody? Because that would not work at all if you live in the United States and do not want to leave. Story 27. I would purchase a congressman or two and establish a 5-acre bee sanctuary in each state, owned through a corporation. Story 28. As someone who works in affordable housing and workforce housing, it can be quite frustrating. I would begin constructing market housing without the regulatory hurdles and simply rent it at affordable housing rates, essentially operating as a nonprofit. My goal would be to supply struggling markets with good, affordable housing so that people can start buying and renting reasonable places at fair prices again. Additionally, the number of dogs I would be rescuing and taking to a farm with me would be quite significant. Story 29. Half of it goes to legitimate food programs. I am a fiscal conservative, but there is no excuse for anyone to be hungry in this country. The other half I use to disappear. Story 30. Quietly transfer funds into family members' accounts with minimal awareness for growth and future income needs. Pay in cash for most purchases. Avoid using banks or loans for anything other than investments and savings. I'm not hiding money under a mattress, but when expenditures arise, limit electronic transactions as much as possible. Story 31. Secret donations are being made to anonymously pay off the debts and homes of families and friends. There are many anonymous donations for feeding those in need and buying Christmas presents for children who would otherwise go without. I may pretend that I still work, but in reality, I spend my days exploring, enjoying spa days, or learning new skills. I go on holidays but do not take any pictures. I just tell others that I am away for a week in a caravan when I am actually in the Maldives. Story 32. I would continue doing what I am doing now, except I would buy a house. Then I would keep enough to be a low-level millionaire and give the rest away anonymously. The most challenging part would be finding creative ways to help my friends and family with money without them realizing. Story 33. I would set up a trust, use it to acquire as much single-family housing as possible, and sell it to families at a break-even point to help them have a chance at stability in this difficult environment. Story 34. I would buy a normal-sized house with average cars and just tell people what my monthly payments are. I would be sure to donate what I could in small amounts. After a few years with my job, I would then buy my parents a home. Story 35. I would donate most of it, buy a few houses in desirable locations around the world, and spend time at each place throughout the year. Story 36. Establishing a fund to support individuals or families in crisis situations can provide immediate relief while keeping my identity confidential. Story 37. I would be a charter captain on a really nice boat for a silent owner. Suite accommodations could also be provided by my LLC employer. Story 38. Travel to a different country. Buy a home and establish a trust for my children. Donate to various charities. Story 39. I would establish a nonprofit organization to help disabled children worldwide, excluding the USA. The wealthiest nation in history should be ashamed of how it treats disabled children. Story 40. If you joined Christopher Columbus's crew and I paid you $5,000 a day from then until today, you would still not have $1 billion. Assuming you have 40 years to spend it, you would need to spend $68,493.15 a day to deplete that amount. There is no way you can spend $68,000 a day without anyone knowing you're wealthy. Story 41. The easiest answer is to spend it on whatever every non-rich person spends their money on, and then it will be gone in no time. You won't have to worry about ever telling anyone you're rich because you won't be anymore. I would invest it and use the profits to build an underground lair beneath my house that nobody would ever notice. Story 42. The core of me says to do all the things I wish I could. The petty part of me says to gather all the people who betrayed me on a ship and dash it against the rocks. Story 43. I would quit my job and tell people I work from home doing database administration tasks. I would travel under the pretense of setting up data centers for global companies. I would purchase land across the United States and properties around the world. The remainder I would invest to generate revenue from interest or dividends. I would donate money and facilities to local outreach programs. Story 44. I would purchase land and build not only a home and family compound, but also a non-profit animal rescue. I would take in sick and dying animals ready for the slaughterhouse so they can retire in peace. I would have free-range chickens, a vegetable garden, and donate that food to homeless shelters. I would employ staff who deserve a second chance, as well as professional veterinarians. I would spend the summers with my own horticulture business, which I love. I would take the winters off to either travel or focus on the rescue shelter. Story 45. Investments that yield a healthy yearly dividend serve as my income, and I don't disclose how much was invested to generate that income. Additionally, I could employ individuals who resemble me to create discouraging posts on social media, making it appear as if I am not doing well. Story 46. Fixing my health issues. I would still go to work, but I would be uncooperative regarding decisions made by management that seemed unreasonable. Story 47. I would invest in a safe fund and use the dividends or monthly interest to pay off mortgages for low-income earners. It would be absolutely exhilarating to see hardworking people have their best day ever. Story 48. Taxes and diversified income annuities are safer, regulated, and tax-deferred until the required minimum distribution age. They can also be easily used as collateral against loans, which would provide my living expenses tax-free. If I were 59 and a half or older when I received it, I would convert the total after-tax amount into multiple Roth individual retirement accounts, which would be tax-free for life. Story 49. Secretly purchase the grocery store where I work and provide sufficient funding to update it, stock higher quality foods, and increase my colleagues' salaries. Story 50. I set up fake contests and made it look like I occasionally won a nice vacation or a new car. Nothing extravagant, but believable enough to appear extremely lucky to my friends and family. Story 51. Through a trust, pay off the mortgages of all family members. Set up a trust to fund children's education. Get a new car, such as a Toyota or Honda. Set aside $10 million in treasury bonds and use the interest as spending money for that year. Establish a trust with $500 million for future generations. Purchase medical debt and forgive it. Donate to medical research and charities. Story 52. Save and invest a significant portion of the money. Set aside funds for family. Build a modest home, not too large but extremely secure, with at least a 4-car garage equipped with indoor electric car chargers. Purchase a reliable electric vehicle for daily use, such as a 2025 Honda Fit, though it would need to be imported. Alternatively, consider a Porsche Macan or Taycan, available in either gas or electric. Additionally, establish the house with solar power. Story 53. I became my town's vagrant in a van, selling curios and driving around giving cryptic, unsolicited advice. I ate food with the crows and spared no expense to find the best cannabis for my husband. I wore robes of impossibly aged fabrics that barely clung to my skin. My hat was made of the finest cotton. I concocted beverages that, when consumed, mysteriously resulted in the imbiber being granted $10,000 in cash on their doorstep. I showed up at hospitals and waved away the woes and costs of treating children and the elderly. I brought peaches to the mayor and asked him to distribute them to those in need. I was arrested for being a nuisance to the mayor. I moved to a new town and did it all over again. I was free. Story 54. Invest enough so that I can reasonably live off the interest without touching the principal. I will find a part-time job somewhere enjoyable, take a few classes, and get my health checked out. Then we will go from there. If anyone asks, I will tell them I stopped getting coffee and avocado toast. Story 55. I do not understand the question. I would just spend it on whatever I want. I do not care about status or what other people think about my financial situation. Story 56. I want to open the coffee shop my family has been encouraging me to start, buy a small, minimalist home with my girlfriend, donate over $200 million to charity and small businesses in my area, invest in safe stocks, keep a few million, and give the rest to my parents, ultimately retiring early. Story 57. 4 years in Kansas City. There was a secret Santa who would hand random people an envelope with money. A few hundred or a few thousand would pay the checks for an entire restaurant. Funds could be placed in multiple accounts in an online bank earning 5%. That results in $50 million a year in interest. I could distribute just over $135,000 every single day and not touch the billion. Additionally, no child in my state would have an outstanding lunch balance on the last day of school, and my local scout district would own their summer camp properties outright. Story 58. If I couldn't tell my wife and kids, I would quit my job and tell my wife I got a promotion. This way, she wouldn't question why money is no longer an issue. I would spend my time when I would normally be at work, bettering myself so that I can be the best version of myself for my family. Exercising, learning new things, attending therapy, getting health scans regularly, and taking up constructive hobbies. This way, when I'm home, my family gets my full attention. Story 59. I would spend some of my money on lotteries and gambling until I win a sizable jackpot, approximately between $20,000 and $100,000. I would make some random drawings and tell my friends and family that I sold the artwork to a private art gallery for a significant sum of money. I would hire someone to manage my stock trading effectively. I plan to spend my wealth on whatever I want or need, but I won't do anything extravagant that could reveal my status as a billionaire. Instead, I would maintain the facade of an artist selling art while relying on my lucky chances in lottery, gambling, and stock trading. I would most likely pay off my parents' mortgage, my car, my credit cards, and my student loans. Then, I would travel the world, experiencing all the places I have always dreamed of visiting, such as having dinner at the Eiffel Tower, running with the bulls in Spain, and enjoying sushi near the Japanese fish market. Story 60. I would buy a small house, a practical car, and some comfortable furniture. Then I would put a significant amount into savings accounts for my children. I would also save some for myself so I could spontaneously undertake home improvement projects and have a nice, comfortable backyard for my grandchildren. Story 61. Set up a trust with my child as the only beneficiary. As a condition of the trust, all my needs must be met at any expense, but everything would be wholly owned by the trust. I would be the trustee. Story 62. There is a large area of land with lakes, rivers, and mountains. A regularly sized house is located there. Just don't disclose the boundaries of my property. I will get a snowmobile and a dirt bike to enjoy fishing and exploring. Story 63. I know at least 7 people I would help with bills, buy them places to live, and set up trusts so they never have to worry about home repairs or taxes. Then I would buy my triplets places to live and vehicles that actually work. I would take my entire family on an amazing trip and establish a trust to assist others. Being able to help people is truly what it is all about. Story 64. I would quietly build schools, fund mental health programs, and establish surprise scholarships. Then I would buy a cozy cabin in the woods with good internet access and pretend I am just really fortunate with remote work. Story 65. I would pay all my utilities for the next 5 years and pay off any outstanding debts. Then I would sit back and enjoy life quietly. Story 66. Invest in growing businesses and the stock market after thorough research from professionals I will hire. Story 67. I would eat at the most expensive restaurants and then take a selfie with my fake bologna sandwich dinner. Story 68. I would pay off debts for a few people who have treated me well. Then I would live a normal life with the rest of the money, have children, and ensure they receive the best education possible. Story 69. I appreciate having someone responsible for my food, cleaning, and garden maintenance, although I enjoy doing a lot of it myself. If I had the financial means, I would happily support the economy of a small city to allow me to focus on the activities I excel at and enjoy the most. Story 70. I would live my life as it is, though I definitely would not be working. I would claim to have inherited everything after buying a modest yet luxurious home. Story 71. An old, run-down Victorian house on the outside features a brand new, luxurious interior that appeals to everyone. I would continue this process until I had one in each corner of the country and one in the middle. Story 72. Good food, a gym membership, health supplements, books, and if it is allowed, travel to another country once a year. Story 73. 1,000 acres of mountain with a home built into the side. It is self-sustaining with wind, solar energy, natural gas, and oil. We raise enough animals for food and have a greenhouse for fruits and vegetables. We live quietly with my family and plan to pass this lifestyle on to my children if they choose to live the same way. Story 74. This is a strangely formed question. No one I know or anyone in general would think otherwise. Taking a lavish trip to Europe would signal that I am wealthy. Buying a new home would also indicate that I am affluent. What is the actual definition of wealthy? Is it a millionaire or a billionaire? I consider someone making $200,000 a year to be very wealthy. If I see someone driving a Cadillac, I assume they are wealthy. If I see someone dining at a high-end steakhouse, I also assume they are affluent. Story 75. Pay off all my friends' homes and other loans. Buy myself a nice house in my preferred part of town and either a cabin in the woods or a beach house to use as a getaway. Give my disabled friend a significant amount so he doesn't have to worry about working anymore. Then I will probably rely on the interest from the rest of it. Story 76. Move to a different country with a large house, while also having a regular house for when family and friends visit, to create the impression that I am doing just fine. Story 77. No one on this earth should want or desire this. If you do, in my opinion, you are not a part of humanity. Story 78. I would live a comfortable life traveling, create trust funds for my children, and repay debts for my family members. Story 79. I will probably spend it on applying artificial intelligence to climate research. It would be enough to advance the field slightly, but truly nobody would really notice. Story 80. I would build small house communities and set them up as owner cooperatives to maintain low-income housing stock. I would also buy apartment complexes that were built with low-income housing tax credits when the credits are about to expire to preserve their low-income housing status. Then I would recruit, hire, and train the best managers and maintenance crews to run them. Story 81. I would invest a few million into retirement savings and distribute the rest evenly and anonymously among various charities and welfare programs. Story 82. I would tell everyone I was a consultant in a field I know enough about to be able to fake it. I make a good living now, so it is feasible that I would have some nice possessions and would continue to have them with my new consulting job. This consulting job would allow me to travel more than I currently do, roughly 50 to 60 nights a year, so my wife, kids, and I can take more vacations, as they already take advantage of my work covering expenses like hotels, and they come along for the trips. I would just have to have a no social media rule while we are traveling. My cottage will be a rental every time I bring family and friends up to it. My boat and other possessions at the cottage will come with the rental. The dedicated rental website will always be full, and I will have a wait list for availability. In a few regular travel destinations, I would own places that I would claim I am renting to people who can connect the dots. The subtle things I would need to be careful about would be my clothing. I love a nice suit, so I would have to balance between $2,000 suits and $20,000 suits to avoid giving off a wealthy impression. However, I will still have at least one $20,000 bespoke suit. During my free time between jobs, I would volunteer more with youth sports, focusing on fundraising, and we would have a lot of anonymous donations. Story 83. I would invest 5 to 10% of my wealth, quit my job, and travel the world because there is so much I want to see and experience. I would give my mother whatever she desires so she can quit her job and enjoy life. I would donate a few million to animal shelters and charities. I would buy a nice house for my wife and myself and a mid-range car, as I do not prefer luxury vehicles. Of course, I would enjoy the benefits of having money, such as traveling in first class, using a private jet, and staying in luxurious resorts. That sums it up. Story 84. The first thing I would do is emigrate to a place like Australia, where land is relatively inexpensive. I would buy a large plot of land, preferably in a semi-regional town. I would run for local government in this small town and hopefully get elected in some capacity. In office, I would propose an 18-hole golf course to be built, funded by an anonymous donor whose only stipulation is that I personally oversee operations at the course. I would then hire someone skilled for that position and fully staff and fund the course while I continue my lifelong quest to break 100. Story 85. I would invest $500 million in buying properties, stocks, and commodities. I would quit my job and apply for roles that I am really passionate about. I would also help people in need. Just typing all that makes me feel guilty. To be honest, I know it's hypothetical, but I would rather earn every penny myself than be handed large amounts of money. Story 86. Just set up a consulting business. No one has to know how well it is really doing. As far as they know, you are busy making money consulting. Also, tell them you have many clients out of town, so it is easy to explain why you aren't always around. If you are concerned about publicly available tax filings, just establish another company for yourself and have that be your primary client. Story 87. Slowly upgrade my current house. Pay off as many loans for my loved ones as possible, anonymously of course. Story 88. Just relaxing, going to the gym, hiking, and spending time with family. I wouldn't have to worry about money. Story 89. I would hire a man with a trombone to follow Elon Musk around and go wah 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 every time he does something foolish. Then he could probably save lives and feed the homeless. Those two things seem equally important to me. Story 90. I would probably buy a bunch of my coworkers' groceries and kitchen appliances. I have had car problems for a long time, so maybe a used Honda Civic or Toyota Camry. Story 91. I would tell no one anything. I would quit my job, engage in hobbies all day, and take many vacations, only some of which were announced. Story 92. I would buy a company that hired me for a significant amount. I would help my friends and family secure jobs at the same company. Ultimately, we all have well-paying jobs. Story 93. I would fund a home for women and children fleeing violence that provides legal aid on a case-by-case basis and transition support. I would also fund a bursary program to help cover application and interview costs for non-traditional applicants to medical school, particularly parents of young children, from my university. Story 94. Start a business, such as writing an ebook and selling it online. Say it is doing surprisingly well. Pay off my debts, donate anonymously to worthy charities, support a few politicians, and then let lifestyle changes occur. The business is thriving, and we are taking a month to travel around Europe. Story 95. If I were to secure a well-paying remote job, I would live in a middle-class manner and take occasional trips abroad for vacations to enjoy some indulgence. At the same time, I would secretly assist struggling family members in indirect ways. I would donate a significant portion of my earnings to local charities and support those in need for the rest of my life. At least 98% of my income would be dedicated to helping others in the community, with the remainder going towards family support. Story 96. Pay the taxes so I can budget the remaining amount. Hire a good accountant and a good lawyer. Pay off the mortgage and buy more properties, but not so many that I cannot handle. Pay off the mortgages of my close relatives after having them sign a non-disclosure agreement, which may not be enforceable but will suggest that I expect them not to share information with others. Save the rest and live off the interest. Sleep for several days, waking only to eat and take care of basic needs, then go back to bed. After becoming tired of just sleeping, hire a personal trainer. Once I reach my ideal weight, consider aesthetic surgery. Enjoy life. Story 97. I have become more proactive in covering the bill when dining out with friends and loved ones. I frequently donate to various fundraising campaigns and anonymously pay off overdue utility bills for strangers. Story 98. Discreetly pay off our mortgage. I wouldn't tell anyone, and I'd pretend we still made payments. Eliminate our credit cards. Get a tattoo occasionally since we haven't been able to get any in a few years. Go on vacation once a year, nowhere extravagant, still flying economy, just normal holidays. I would donate money regularly to various charities. I would tell people my husband got a promotion, which would cover the improvements in our new lifestyle. We don't post much on social media, so we don't really have many people to hide from. It would just be hiding it from family, a few good friends, and coworkers. My husband could tell his colleagues that I got a promotion. There's no crossover between our work environments, so it would be very easy. Story 99. I run a business. I would equip this business with all the production machinery essential for growth, without worrying about liquidity issues or financial problems. I aim to build entire facilities to expand our portfolio. By the time I am older, my children and grandchildren will run this business. Story 100. I would ensure that Sesame Street remains available indefinitely. It is a remarkable program that helps children around the world address complex issues, and the current administration is eager to eliminate public funding for it. It was also instrumental in my mother learning English when she first moved to the country. Story 101. Everyone I love would have a safe place to live, bills paid, and plenty of food so they do not go hungry. My cats would have the grandest of catios. Story 102. If by nobody you mean people who actually know me, this would be easy. I would quit my job, invest, and spend slowly, using interest on the 95% of the money that I set aside to support myself in several charities indefinitely. If you mean literally nobody, then that means banks and such can't know, so I would have to strategically hide it and spend it carefully. I would plan a home purchase while still employed, then quit once brokers and banks no longer monitor me. I would make careful deposits in small enough sums to be overlooked while taking care of my needs. I would prioritize cash purchases as much as possible, provide anonymous donations, give good tips, and help the homeless every time I see someone. Nothing huge, but significant enough to make a difference. Story 103. Does nobody include your accountant, the government, or my bank? If I wanted to use it to eat expensive caviar every night in secret, would my caviar supplier, assuming my $50,000 per year caviar habit indicates I'm probably wealthy, count as someone knowing I'm rich? What's the threshold for nobody? Because if it just means that no friends, family, or social media can know, but I could still staff a secret retreat somewhere, my answer will be very different than if I have to hide it all in the woods and hope no one notices that I spend $2,000 more per month than I actually earn. Story 104. I honestly wouldn't buy much. I'm not a materialistic person, so having material possessions doesn't appeal to me. I would set some aside for my children and my retirement, plus any emergencies that might arise. Then I would help as many people as I could. In my opinion, no one needs $1 billion. It should be given to those who need food, housing, and medicine. Story 105. I would just leave. Spin the globe and pick a spot. Move there. I have $1 billion. I don't want to tell anyone about it. I just want to get away and be by myself somewhere that isn't here. Story 106. Charities should ensure that aid is directed to the people who need it, rather than lining executives' pockets or funding unnecessary projects. Story 107. Start a small business and mislead my family and friends about my income. Give myself an allowance from my earnings and spend it on what I desire. Story 108. Anonymously donate to every underfunded public school district in America. Pay my friends' student loans, retire my parents, and so on. $1 billion is excessive for one person to need for themselves. It should be illegal. I would donate a significant amount and still have enough to secure my children's future and never have to work a day in my life again. Story 109. I think it would be next to impossible. People are not foolish, especially those you know. How am I supposed to hide my wealth from my best friend of over 20 years? We work in the same industry. He knows how much money I make and how much debt I have. How am I supposed to explain to him that I no longer work? Sure, I would not have any financial stress, but I would have to live at my current level. Maybe I could get a house and a car just above that and say I got a great deal. I couldn't travel and would have to convince people that my job doesn't mind me being gone for half the year. And yes, I could secretly funnel money into various causes and charities. But if that's all I can really do, the question might as well be about which charities I would support with $1 billion. I suppose the only way for this to be any real fun is if I have nobody in my life. Story 110. Travel the world alone, buy a piece of land, build a small house with an adjacent tower, place a telescope on top, dedicate one section of the tower as a library or study space, learn, and, of course, have cats. Story 111. I'm introverted, so no one would even know because it would require having friends to be aware. Story 112. A large farmhouse with acres of land for hunting, fishing, and farming, situated miles away from people, but still accessible for delivery services. Story 113. Set up a private holdings company. On paper, I would just be an employee. Its ownership is easily concealed. Story 114. buy my own house and pursue hobbies, quit my job, open bank accounts for my young nieces and nephews as a small starter fund and assist relatives in need. Ensure that my funeral expenses such as cremation and memorial services are covered. It's only $1 billion, so I am confident I would be able to spend, invest, or give away the cash within my lifetime. Story 115. I would run an online casino and only allow some people I care about to play in it. They would have a stunning lucky jackpot. Story 116. Nothing for me to be able to spend, gift, or invest that money would mean people would know I had it. Even just putting it in a bank account would mean someone knew I had that money. Story 117. After paying off debts and setting aside enough to fund my current lifestyle for the rest of my life, I would help younger family members to give them a leg up while still encouraging them to work. I would contribute the remainder to a charity to assist the poor and working poor in my home state, all very quietly. Story 118. My time. 2 hours a day for a maid or cleaning person. Full-time mother's helper around the house to maintain general tidiness and provide us a break from the kids when needed. Full-time assistant and service representative for my business. Full-service lawn and yard care. Additionally, I would complete my backyard, pool, and related tasks. Story 119. Pay off all debts, set up a fund to provide an income, make some job changes to increase my income to the upper middle class, then buy a farm and animals for it. With whatever is left over, purchase the complete set of current Warhammer 40,000 rules and maybe 12 to 15 Games Workshop miniatures. Story 120. Invest enough in safe and stable accounts so that the interest matches my current income and benefits. Create an entity to manage my insurance and medical needs, making it appear that I am still employed. Gradually step back from my current job. For the remaining funds, invest for growth and establish a limited liability company, then engage in local anonymous donations. All donations should benefit individuals and businesses located in my current county. Story 121. The definition of rich is subjective. I could live off a Canadian welfare check in some parts of Asia or Africa and be considered rich by their standards. Story 122. My 90-year-old dad requires assistance with every need. I also take care of animals and people in need, and I need a gardener for my house because my hands are getting too old for that. Story 123. Living comfortably in a safe area. Travel. Charities. Helping family and friends. Education. Improve my skills in hobbies. Story 124. Video games and home improvement. You don't need $1 billion to do this. It reminds me of the quote from Office Space. Well, you don't need $1 million to do nothing. My cousin is broke and he doesn't do anything. Story 125. Used cars, reasonable house, and likely keeping my job because I don't hate it, just to maintain appearances. I would have a great computer, though, and have everything delivered. I would never step foot in a store again. Story 126. A single-family home in my high cost of living city on a few acres, along with the property taxes for the remainder of my life, would make a significant impact. I would also ensure that my parents and brother are financially secure. I would provide my brother with a house and cover his property taxes as well. My brother and I have discussed opening a cafe that would also serve as a used and new bookstore. It would feature a tropical greenhouse, lounge, and stage in the back, selling plants and locally made artisanal products. We would use the best espresso available, handmade mugs, and local produce and groceries for all the food items. We would bake our own bread and not worry about operating at a deficit. It would be an oasis where people could gather for hours. Story 127. Quit working for others. Pay off my parents' debt. Purchase land and build off-grid, as I am already in the trade. Enjoy building for myself. Establish a small farm with vegetables and gardens. Ensure my partner is always happy and fulfilled. Story 128. I always thought sailing the open ocean on a cruise ship would be a good retirement plan. To be honest, I would probably just buy an island and set up a Neolithic live-action role-playing adventure for people to take a break from modern life. Story 129. Fixing my hearse to make it awesome. I am focusing on the bodywork and all. I might get a newer one and do the same, The rest will go to bills and family. Story 130. Take care of immediate family. And because I know some have loose lips, have everyone sign a non-disclosure agreement with repayment in case of a breach. I have over 1,000 acres of wooded land to build a family compound in the center and surround the property line with a long continuous fence. I want to live the rest of my life on my land and hopefully never have to deal with difficult people again. Story 131. I would hire a face of a new media company and only employ academics as news anchors. We would counter misinformation using the same psychological strategies of outrage and have psychologists design a re-education program presented as a patriotic channel. We would recruit celebrities and other wealthy individuals, both liberal and leftist, to lobby for laws that favor the people. We would sell merchandise made in the United States to fund our re-education program, providing access to honest and informed media for the poorest and least educated areas at no cost. Our entire marketing approach is that we are free for individuals who support patriotic values to preserve the essence of our nation. We hope many will discontinue cable subscriptions, as we would collaborate with various streaming platforms to support popular shows. Additionally, we would work with social media networks to promote our brand of information. In 40 years, when the current generation is gone, we would reveal our strategies through various documentaries, highlighting how easy it is to manipulate the public with an agenda. We hope to make a significant impact so that society can better recognize misinformation and extremist agendas. Story 132. You ask some questions that may seem silly. This is the perfect scenario for suddenly having $1 billion. I would do whatever I wanted. Story 133. I have been planning for years to move to Costa Rica. My old college roommate and his family recently obtained their legal residency there and have been assisting me in getting my plan into motion. Therefore, it should not come as a surprise to anyone that my family is relocating. Story 134. A private workshop for myself with enough space for 5 or 6 cars, possibly 7. A house with adequate space for my wife and her hobbies. I would continue working for my boss as if nothing had changed, though I might take a few more days off each year for my cars, but not too many. Story 135. I would create a foundation to reward all the good people I know, set up trust funds or educational funds for those I care about, and purchase properties. Story 136. College and educational funds, as well as housing support for children in foster care aging out, are crucial. Extra food support for school-age children can be established by setting up shops near schools where they can take meals home for free. Those who refuse to provide support, arguing that parents should be responsible, should reconsider their stance. It is essential to ensure that every child is fed and educated. I would dedicate my resources to advocating against legislators who cut social services for vulnerable individuals. Certain politicians would be primary targets due to their detrimental policies and actions. I would relentlessly work to hold them accountable. Story 137. I think I would act like the character from the movie Tron, who manages a fancy nightclub but claims to report to an elusive owner who is never present. I would buy an elegant mansion or estate and let everyone believe I was just the property manager, while secretly being the owner. Story 138. I would pay off my house, upgrade my computer, and simplify my job to something like a shelf stocker at a grocery store. I prefer low-key living. Story 139. Buy a comfortable house for my family to live in, a cozy home for my mom with a cleaning service since her health is not great. Purchase an easy-to-drive car for her, and buy us a new vehicle. Keep everything sensible, not extravagant. Start a college fund for each of my children. Pay off debt. Space it all out so it doesn't reveal that I now have money. Story 140. I would be funding various forms of assistance for others. Experiencing domestic abuse? Apply for help with moving expenses, deposits, and the first month's rent. Struggling with unsupportive parents because of your sexual orientation? We can help. Battling drug addiction? Assistance for rehabilitation is available. Dealing with poor management? Support to advocate for your rights is here. Need funding for trade school or a college degree and willing to help others for 5 years. We can assist with rent. Facing eviction from an untrustworthy landlord? We can help you fight back. looking to escape from a state with restrictive laws. You will be supported. I would create a space large enough to allow everyone to thrive in the oppressive systems that hold people down. I would invest in women and people of color businesses. I would establish a union for all citizens. Do children need dental work? Absolutely. I would fund cooking classes for anyone to learn how to buy food affordably and prepare healthy meals. I would support safe spaces for kids and teens before and after school. I would buy and build an entire community filled with modest homes for those who contribute to a better life for all. There is no limit to this vision. I would leave this world with nothing but pennies remaining. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.